Let's begin with the first and perhaps most foundational principle, awareness. You can't change what you don't notice. And most people, unfortunately, go through life completely unaware of the quiet, constant stream of negative thoughts that shape their emotions, decisions, and results. You see, the mind has a tendency to wander toward fear, toward doubt, toward limitation. It's not because we're weak. It's because the human brain evolved to protect us. It looks for danger, for what might go wrong. But in the modern world, that instinct often becomes our prison rather than our protection. Jim Rohn used to say, "Stand guard at the door of your mind." That's not just a poetic phrase. It's a commandment for mental clarity. Think about it. How many times a day does your mind whisper something negative, and you don't even challenge it? I'm not good enough. I'll never get there. It's too late. What if I fail? Each of these thoughts, if left unchecked, becomes a thread in the fabric of your belief system. And before long, that fabric becomes your identity. Awareness is the first strike against that invisible enemy. When you start to observe your thoughts, not judge them, just observe, you begin to separate you from your mind. Most people never make that distinction. They think they are their thoughts. But the moment you say, "I just noticed a negative thought," you are already free from it. You've stepped into the role of the observer, the thinker behind the thoughts. That's power. That's consciousness. That's where transformation begins. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that your mind is like a radio station. Most of us are tuned into the channel of self, doubt, worry, and comparison. It plays in the background all day, and we don't even realize it. But the truth is, you hold the dial. You can tune in to a higher frequency, one of possibility, gratitude, and self-belief. Awareness is how you reach for that dial. Start paying attention to your inner dialogue during the day. Catch yourself in the act of thinking small. When you say, "I could never do that," pause and ask, "Says who?" When you tell yourself, "I always mess things up," ask, "Is that true? Or is that just a story I've been repeating for too long?" These little moments of awareness break the trance of negativity. They interrupt the automatic loop that's been running your life. Philosophers for centuries have pointed to this same truth. Socrates called it *knowing thyself. Buddha called it *mindfulness. Jim Rohn called it *self-observation. The language changes, but the message is identical. Awareness is the foundation of wisdom. Because when you know what's going on inside your own mind, you gain the freedom to choose a different direction. Without awareness, you're a passenger. With awareness, you become the driver. This isn't about pretending to be positive all the time. That's not awareness. That's denial. Real awareness accepts what is. If you feel fear, admit it. If you feel doubt, acknowledge it. Awareness is not the act of escaping negativity. It's the act of shining light on it. And when light meets darkness, the darkness doesn't fight back. It just disappears. Every time you recognize a negative thought, you weaken it. You make it less automatic, less believable. Over time, you'll begin to see patterns, how certain situations trigger certain fears, how certain people drain your optimism. This knowledge gives you leverage. You can't manage what you don't measure, and you can't improve what you don't understand. Awareness gives you both understanding and control. Jim Rohn once said, "Your life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change." But before change comes awareness, because awareness is the spark that ignites every other principle. It's what allows you to guard your mind like a garden, to choose your thoughts with intention, to replace the weeds with seeds of growth. Without awareness, all the motivational talk in the world won't help you. With awareness, even the smallest insight can change the trajectory of your life. So, starting today, make it your practice to listen to yourself, not in a critical way, but in a curious way. Notice what you say, how you react, what emotions follow certain thoughts. Don't try to control them, just observe. Because when you observe, you understand. When you understand, you rise above. And once you rise above your thoughts, you are no longer at their mercy. That's the moment you reclaim your power. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant grows. Jim Rohn used to emphasize this simple but profound truth. Your mind will produce fruit or weeds, depending entirely on what you allow to enter it. Most people never take time to cultivate their mental garden. They leave the gate wide open, letting anyone and anything throw their seeds in. And when life becomes full of confusion, worry, and frustration, they wonder why the harvest is so poor. But the answer is simple. If you don't plant intentionally, you'll live accidentally. Every thought is a seed. Every word you speak, every idea you entertain, every belief you hold, each one carries creative power. When you let negativity linger, it spreads like weeds, choking out your confidence, your creativity, and your peace of mind. Jim Rohn often said, neglect starts as an infection. It's small at first, harmless even. But if you neglect to weed your mental garden, it grows until it overtakes everything. The weeds don't ask for permission. They simply grow wherever you allow them to. That's why guarding your mind is not optional. It's essential. You have to be deliberate about what you let in. Think of your mind as sacred ground, something worth protecting. Every day, you're being bombarded with messages. From the media, from conversations, from social platforms, all competing to plant seeds in your consciousness. Most of those seeds are not designed to help you grow. They're designed to keep you distracted, fearful, and reactive. Guarding your mind means taking full responsibility for what you consume, what you listen to, and who you spend your time with. Jim Rohn's wisdom rings true here. Stand guard at the door of your mind. That means becoming selective, just like a gardener chooses which seeds to plant. You can't expose yourself to endless negativity and expect a positive harvest. If you constantly listen to complaining, fear, gossip, or scarcity thinking, you're watering the weeds. But if you spend time with uplifting books, wise mentors, and disciplined minds, you're enriching the soil. The difference between those two choices becomes the difference between a life of quiet frustration and a life of purpose and abundance. This is why personal development is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Feeding your mind good material is as important as feeding your body good food. When you read, study, and reflect, you're fertilizing your mental garden. You're choosing to plant seeds of knowledge, hope, and vision. And the beauty of this process is that your garden begins to produce automatically. Once you establish a pattern of positive input, the output of your life begins to transform. Your thoughts become sharper, your emotions steadier, your outlook brighter. But make no mistake, this takes discipline. You don't guard your mind once and call it done. Just like a garden, it needs daily attention. You have to keep pulling out the weeds, those little negative thoughts that creep in uninvited. You have to check your environment regularly. Are you around people who build you or drain you? Are you feeding your mind truth or trash? Awareness alone isn't enough. You must act on that awareness. You must plant intentionally and prune relentlessly. Jim Rohn used to compare this process to the laws of nature. You can't cheat the seasons. You can't plant weeds and expect flowers. The mind obeys the same laws. Whatever you plant, you will reap. If you sow discipline, you'll harvest success. If you sow laziness, you'll harvest regret. If you sow fear, you'll harvest limitations. But if you sow belief, effort, and gratitude, you'll harvest a life that's rich in meaning and fulfillment. And here's something people often overlook. Even good seeds take time to grow. Just because you start reading, studying, or thinking positively today doesn't mean everything changes overnight. Growth takes patience. You don't dig up the seed every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you nurture it, you trust the process. The same goes for your mental garden. Trust that the good you're planting today will bear fruit in time. So, protect your mind fiercely. Be intentional with your influences. Surround yourself with people and ideas that challenge you to rise higher. Don't let negativity take root just because it's common. Remember, the majority isn't always right. Most people settle for mental clutter. But you, if you're listening to this, are here to build something greater. Your mind is the soil of your destiny. Guard it with care, plant with purpose, nurture it with discipline, because if you don't control what grows in your mind, something else will, and it rarely grows in your favor. Cultivate your garden and life will reward you with a beautiful harvest. You can't simply delete negative thinking, you must replace it. The human mind abhors a vacuum. If you try to push negativity out without giving your mind something stronger to hold on to, it will come right back. Jim Rohn used to say, you can't just say, I'm not going to think negative anymore and expect that to work. You've got to fill your mind with something good. That's the secret, not suppression, but substitution. See, most people spend their energy fighting their thoughts instead of redirecting them. They battle their fears, their doubts, their regrets, but energy follows focus. When you fight what you don't want, you feed it. When you focus on what you want, you begin to reshape your inner reality. The difference between those two approaches can determine your entire emotional climate. Replacing negative thinking starts with building a new habit of language. Listen to the words you speak to yourself. The phrases I can't, I never, or that's just the way I am, are declarations, powerful ones. Every time you say them, you reinforce limitation. But every time you shift that language, you create possibility. Turn I can't into how can I. Turn it's impossible into it's a challenge worth facing. These aren't empty affirmations. They are mental commands. You are literally instructing your subconscious mind where to go and what to create. Jim Rohn taught that life responds to your attitude. Your attitude, in turn, is built by the quality of your thoughts. When you replace negative thinking with constructive thinking, you start programming your mind for progress instead of paralysis. Constructive thoughts are thoughts that lead somewhere. They're not about perfection, they're about direction. They ask better questions, generate better energy, and create better results. For example, instead of saying, I'm not good at this, say, I'm learning to master this. That single shift moves your identity from fixed to growing. Instead of saying, I've failed, say, I've learned something valuable. Now failure becomes a stepping stone instead of a wall. This is how the most successful people think. They convert every negative into fuel. They don't deny problems, they reinterpret them. Philosophically, this is the art of reframing, choosing how to interpret what happens to you. Life doesn't change because you wish it to. Life changes because you change the meaning you assign to it. Two people can face the same event. One says, this ruined me. The other says, this built me. The event was neutral. The meaning made the difference. Constructive thinking is the ability to choose empowering meanings, even in difficult moments. Now, this doesn't mean you live in denial or pretend everything is wonderful when it isn't. Jim Rohn often said, you've got to see things as they are, but not worse than they are. Real growth begins with honesty. Acknowledge the problem, but refuse to live in it. Once you've seen the reality, move to what can be done. That's the pivot from negative to constructive. Instead of drowning in the problem, you begin swimming toward the solution. Another powerful practice is gratitude. Gratitude is not just a feeling, it's a mental discipline. It replaces the habit of complaint with the habit of appreciation. When you start your day counting what's right instead of what's wrong, your mind becomes a magnet for opportunity. You'll start noticing solutions that were invisible before, because negativity blinds and gratitude illuminates. Think of your thoughts like a mental diet. Whatever you feed your mind consistently becomes your mental body. If you feed it junk, complaints, gossip, fear, you'll feel weak, sluggish, and unmotivated. But if you feed it good ideas, uplifting stories, challenging goals, and inspiring philosophy, you'll build mental strength. Replacing negativity isn't about pretending bad doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it dominate your mental nutrition. One of the most effective ways to make this real is through action. You can't think your way out of negativity. You act your way out. When you move, you shift energy. When you take even the smallest step toward improvement, your mind adjusts to align with progress. Replace thoughts like "I'll never get out of this situation" with "what's one small thing I can do right now?" That single shift focus on action breaks the cycle of mental paralysis. And remember, this isn't an overnight transformation. It's a process of training, just like exercise. The first time you replace a negative thought, it feels unnatural. The 10th time, it's easier. The 100th time, it's automatic. Eventually, constructive thinking becomes your default setting. Jim Rohn believed that one of the greatest privileges of being human is that we can choose our thoughts. We're not trees. We can move, adapt, and direct our minds. We can decide what we dwell on, and that decision, repeated daily, reshapes the course of our life. So when negativity rises, don't fight it. Redirect it. Ask a better question. Speak a better word. Take a better action. Because the only real way to eliminate darkness is to turn on the light. Replace every negative with something that builds, and soon you'll find there's no room left in your mind for anything else. Environment is everything. It shapes your mindset more than willpower ever could. You can try to think positively all day long, but if you're surrounded by negativity, people who complain, conversations that tear down, media that feeds fear, you're fighting an uphill battle. Jim Rohn used to say, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." That statement isn't poetic. It's biological, psychological, and practical truth. Your environment is constantly programming your thoughts, your emotions, and ultimately your destiny. Every influence in your life is like a silent sculptor, shaping who you become. The people you talk to, the books you read, the shows you watch, the habits you repeat, all of it is forming the architecture of your mind. And the problem is, most people never choose their environment. They inherit it. They grow up in certain patterns, certain groups, certain routines, and never stop to ask, is this environment helping me grow or keeping me stuck? If you want to kill negative thinking, you have to control your environment with precision. Start by looking at your circle. Who do you spend the most time with? Do they inspire you or exhaust you? Do they encourage possibility or feed doubt? Every conversation you engage in either plants a seed of growth or a seed of decay. Jim Rohn called this the law of association. If you associate with cynics, you'll soon start doubting. If you associate with dreamers, you'll start believing. That's not superstition. It's psychology. We adapt emotionally to the energy we're exposed to most often. You see, human beings are social creatures. We subconsciously mirror the tone, language, and attitudes of the people around us. Spend enough time around complainers and you'll find something to complain about too. Spend enough time around disciplined, purpose-driven individuals and your standards will rise automatically. It's not about judging others, it's about protecting your inner environment. You don't have to cut people off, but you do have to set boundaries. Some people deserve your compassion, not your company. And it's not just people, it's input. Your environment includes what you consume mentally. Every headline you scroll, every post you engage with, every show you binge, is shaping your mood and mindset. Negativity sells, and the world is constantly trying to sell it to you. If you don't set limits, your mind becomes a dumping ground for noise and fear. Jim Rohn often reminded us that the mind works best with discipline, not disorder. You have to become intentional about your consumption. Start replacing low-quality input with high-quality ideas. Listen to audiobooks, read biographies, study great thinkers. Surround yourself digitally and physically with excellence. Let your environment remind you of who you want to become, not who you used to be. Make your home, your workspace, your routine an ecosystem of growth. A place where inspiration is normal, not rare. Because environment doesn't just reflect your standards, it raises them. Here's an interesting truth. Most people think motivation comes first, then environment, but often it's the other way around. You don't get motivated and then find better influences. You find better influences, and then motivation appears. You can't stay down for long when your environment is built for growth. It's like planting yourself in rich soil. You don't have to force the flower to grow. The conditions do the work. Jim Rohn used to tell a story about the power of association. He said, if you want to become wealthy, study wealth. If you want to become wise, study wisdom. If you want to become strong, study strength. In other words, immerse yourself in the energy of the qualities you desire. You can't rise above the level of what surrounds you. You must align your environment with your goals. That also means decluttering physically and mentally. A messy space creates a messy mind. A chaotic schedule creates chaotic thinking. Clean your surroundings, organize your priorities, remove what drains your focus. Every unnecessary distraction is a doorway for negativity to enter. Simplify your environment so your energy stays directed toward what matters. And yes, sometimes that means walking away from environments that no longer serve you. That can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of growth. You can't transform your life while staying loyal to spaces that encourage your worst habits. If your environment keeps you small, step out of it. Because when you change your environment, your mindset follows. This is the power of design, designing your surroundings to make positivity inevitable and negativity difficult. Surround yourself with reminders of your goals. Hang quotes that speak to your vision. Keep books within reach that elevate your mind. Play music that energizes you. Every detail counts. Every choice either lifts you or lowers you. You can't live in a toxic environment and expect a healthy mind. You can't breathe negativity and expect to exhale confidence. The atmosphere you build becomes the air your spirit breathes. So protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. Create an environment where growth feels natural, and negativity won't survive. Emotional discipline is the art of mastering yourself when your emotions try to master you. It's the quiet strength that separates those who crumble under pressure from those who rise above it. Jim Rohn often said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. But that bridge isn't just built of action. It's built of emotional control. Because before you can discipline your behavior, you must first discipline your feelings. Most people think their emotions are automatic, that they simply happen to them. They say, I can't help how I feel, but that's not true. You can't always control the first feeling that shows up, but you can absolutely control what you do with it. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you suppress emotions. It means you manage them wisely. It means you respond instead of react. It means you make decisions based on principles, not moods. Every day, you'll face moments that test your emotional discipline. A harsh word, an unexpected setback, a plan that doesn't go your way. These are all invitations to grow. When your emotions spike, your mind goes offline. You say things you don't mean. You make choices you later regret. But when you pause, when you breathe and observe, you reclaim your power. That moment of pause is what separates wisdom from impulse. Jim Rohn taught that life will test you constantly, not to punish you but to strengthen you. Challenges don't build character, they reveal it. And if your emotions control you, they will dictate your destiny. Think about it. How many relationships have been ruined by a few undisciplined words? How many dreams have been abandoned because someone let fear or frustration win the moment? Emotional discipline is the ability to hold steady when everything around you is shaking. Psychologically, emotional discipline is about awareness, perspective, and practice. Awareness allows you to recognize what you're feeling in real time. Perspective helps you understand that emotions are temporary, feelings come and go, but choices create consequences. And practice builds the muscle. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you strengthen your capacity to lead yourself. One of the greatest misconceptions about successful people is that they don't feel negative emotions. They do. They feel fear, doubt, anxiety, anger just like everyone else. The difference is, they don't leave asterisk there. They feel it, acknowledge it, and move forward anyway. That's discipline. It's not emotional numbness, it's emotional mastery. Jim Rohn liked to say, asterisk, don't let your emotions take you where you don't want to go. Asterisk, that's a profound statement. Anger can make you destructive. Fear can make you passive. Sadness can make you quit. But discipline turns emotion into energy. It channels raw feeling into productive motion. The same emotion that could destroy you can drive you if you learn how to direct it. The goal isn't to suppress emotions, but to harness them. Here's a practical truth. Emotional discipline begins with small moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you choose patience instead of anger, you're training. When you feel discouraged and still keep working, you're training. When you're criticized and respond with grace instead of defensiveness, you're training. Each small victory builds your emotional stamina. Philosophically, this is the essence of Stoicism. The idea that while you can't control events, you can always control your interpretation and your response. That's not denial, that's power. Jim Rohn wasn't a Stoic philosopher, but his teachings align perfectly with that timeless wisdom. He believed that mature people take full responsibility for their internal state. They don't wait for circumstances to calm down, they calm themselves. You see, the quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by how you handle what happens to you. The world doesn't owe you ease, it offers you opportunity. But opportunity often shows up disguised as difficulty. If your emotions are undisciplined, you'll miss it. You'll run from discomfort instead of learning from it. But when you discipline your emotions, you start seeing every setback as a signal to grow stronger. Jim Rohn called this developing emotional maturity. He said maturity is being able to keep your commitments long after the mood in which you made them has passed. That's the real test. Can you stay the course when enthusiasm fades? Can you still act with integrity when you don't feel like it? That's where character is formed, in the moments when no one is watching and excuses are easy. One of the most effective tools for building emotional discipline is reflection. Take time daily to review your reactions. Where did you lose control today? What triggered you? How could you have responded differently? Reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without reflection, emotions repeat their lessons over and over. With it, you grow faster, stronger, calmer. And remember, discipline is not a restriction, it's a liberation. When you master your emotions, you free yourself from being a slave to circumstance. You gain consistency. You gain peace. You gain control over your direction. That's why emotional discipline isn't just a personal virtue. It's a competitive advantage. In a world where most people are reactive, the one who remains composed becomes the leader. So, the next time your emotions rise up, don't see it as a fail. You see it as an opportunity. An opportunity to practice power, patience, and perspective. Because the true strength of a person is not measured by how loud they can shout, but by how quietly they can stand in the storm. Master your emotions, and no external force can master you. Feeding your mind with inspiration is one of the greatest responsibilities you have to yourself. Just as your body depends on food for strength, your mind depends on input for direction. Jim Rohn often said, asterisk, you are what you read, what you listen to, and who you associate with. Asterisk, and that statement carries enormous weight. Your mental diet determines the quality of your thoughts, and your thoughts determine the quality of your life. Most people take better care of what they feed their stomach than what they feed their mind. They count calories but not conversations. They avoid junk food but consume hours of mental garbage, news designed to alarm, gossip designed to distract, entertainment designed to numb. The result, a mind full of clutter, confusion, and quiet despair. You can't think clearly, dream boldly, or act decisively when your mental environment is polluted. You have to protect the intake. Feeding your mind inspiration doesn't mean you live in denial or ignore reality. It means you deliberately choose what uplifts, strengthens, and educates you. Because whatever you feed your mind long enough becomes your default thinking pattern. Inspiration, when fed consistently, becomes the natural rhythm of your thoughts. And when that happens, you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because your attitude gets stronger. Jim Rohn's philosophy on this was simple. Learning is the beginning of wealth. Learning is the beginning of health. Learning is the beginning of spirituality. In other words, growth begins the moment you expose your mind to something better. Inspiration is not a one-time spark. It's a daily practice. You have to renew it constantly. That's why he called it personal development. It's personal because no one can do it for you, and it's development because it's ongoing. Start with what you read. Reading is the most efficient way to reshape your mind. A great book can compress decades of wisdom into a few hours of insight. It's like borrowing another person's mind for a moment. When you read philosophy, history, self-development, or biography, you're feeding your mind with examples of courage, resilience, and greatness. Each story becomes a seed that takes root in your thinking. And then there's listening. Jim Rohn used to tell people to turn their car into a mobile classroom. While others waste time complaining about traffic, you can be learning about business, leadership, psychology, or success. Those hours add up. Over a year, that could be the equivalent of a college education just from what you feed your ears. Because audio input doesn't just inform, it transforms your inner voice. You begin to speak to yourself with the language of winners instead of worriers. But inspiration is not just intellectual, it's emotional. It's not enough to fill your mind with information. You must fill your heart with enthusiasm. Inspiration is fuel for both logic and spirit. That's why it's important to watch or listen to people who make you feel alive, not just informed. Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, these voices don't just teach. They awaken something in you. They remind you that life is meant to be lived fully, not merely survived. The key, however, is consistency. You can't binge inspiration once a month and expect results. Just as your body needs daily nourishment, your mind needs daily feeding. 10 minutes of powerful content each morning can completely change your trajectory for the day. The words you hear first thing in the morning set the emotional tone for your choices. Feed yourself ideas of growth, and you'll act like a person who's growing. Feed yourself ideas of limitation, and you'll act like someone trapped by them. Feeding your mind with inspiration also means practicing gratitude. Gratitude is the natural fertilizer of a healthy mind. When you begin to notice what's right with your life instead of what's wrong, inspiration grows easily. Gratitude shifts your focus from scarcity to abundance, from complaint to appreciation. Jim Rohn often said, learn to be happy with what you have while you pursue what you want. That balance between contentment and ambition is the essence of a strong mind. One of the most powerful ways to keep your mind inspired is to surround yourself with inspired people. You can't stay dull in the presence of fire. When you spend time with individuals who think big, work hard, and aim high, their energy rubs off on you. You begin to normalize success, optimism, and persistence. That's why Jim Rohn was so passionate about association, because inspiration is contagious. But here's the deeper truth. Inspiration is not something you chase forever. At some point, it becomes who you are. When you feed your mind well for long enough, you start producing your own inspiration. You become a source of light to others. You begin speaking words that lift people instead of pulling them down. You become the book, the voice, the example that once helped you. Inspiration, then, is not about hype or motivation. It's about transformation. It's about aligning your daily input with the kind of person you want to become. Feed your mind with wisdom, and your life will begin to mirror that wisdom. Feed it with nonsense and confusion, and your results will reflect that as well. The law is simple. Your outer world follows your inner world, so be intentional. Every day, read something worth reading. Listen to something worth hearing. Speak something worth saying. Because the moment you take control of what enters your mind, you take control of what exits your life. Feed your mind with inspiration until it becomes self-sustaining, until you no longer wait for the light, but become the light. Fear is the root of most negative thinking. It whispers, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if I lose? It paralyzes action, clouds judgment, and makes small problems look enormous. But here's the truth Jim Rohn so often reminded his audiences of. Fear is not a signal to stop. It's a signal to grow. Every fear is simply an invitation to expand beyond the limits of who you've been. To kill negative thinking once and for all, you must choose growth over fear every single day. You see, fear isn't your enemy, it's your compass. It points directly toward the areas of your greatest potential. When you feel fear, it's often because you're standing at the edge of growth. It's your mind's way of saying, here's the next level, but you've never been here before. The tragedy is that most people interpret that signal backwards. Instead of stepping forward, they retreat. Instead of saying, this is where I grow, they say, this is where I stop. That one choice between growth and fear defines the trajectory of a person's life. Jim Rohn would often remind us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. Courage is what allows you to act even when your knees are shaking. And the beautiful thing about courage is that it compounds. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. Every time you face fear and move forward anyway, you send a message to your subconscious. Asterisk, I am capable. I am growing, I am in control. Asterisk, and soon, the situations that once terrified you become ordinary, even effortless. Philosophically, fear is an illusion. It's a projection, a story about something that hasn't even happened yet. It's the mind trying to protect itself from imagined pain. But the moment you take action, the illusion dissolves. Action is the antidote to fear. You can't outthink fear, you can only outgrow it through movement. That's why the people who achieve the most aren't necessarily the most talented. They're simply the ones who move despite uncertainty. They use fear as fuel. Jim Rohn's philosophy on this was crystal clear. Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. That's growth thinking. The world doesn't shrink to accommodate your fears, you expand to handle its challenges. When you adopt that mindset, problems stop feeling like punishments and start feeling like teachers. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start saying, what is this trying to teach me? That shift, from resistance to receptivity, is the beginning of freedom. Growth always demands discomfort. There's no way around it. You can't build strength without resistance. You can't build confidence without risk. The reason fear feels so heavy is because it's carrying the weight of your potential. On the other side of every fear is a version of you that's stronger, wiser, and freer. And the only way to meet that version is to walk straight through the discomfort. In practical terms, that means setting challenges that stretch you just beyond what feels comfortable. It could be speaking up in a meeting, starting a new venture, or simply saying no when you used to say yes. These moments may feel small, but each one rewires your mind. You're teaching yourself that fear is survivable, that growth is safe. Over time, the very situations that once triggered doubt become sources of energy. Jim Rohn loved to talk about the seasons of life. He said, don't curse the winter, it's what makes the spring valuable. Growth thinking is built on that same truth. The difficult seasons of life aren't there to destroy you. They are there to prepare you. Fear makes you retreat from winter, but growth makes you plant anyway. When you trust the process, even the coldest season becomes part of your harvest. And here's something deeply important. Choosing growth over fear doesn't mean you never feel afraid again. It means you stop letting fear make your decisions. You might still feel it in your stomach before you take a risk, or in your chest before you speak your truth, but you act anyway. That's what separates the achiever from the dreamer. The achiever feels fear and moves. The dreamer feels fear and waits. Over time, this daily decision, to grow rather than shrink, creates a completely new mindset. You start to expect challenge. You start to welcome it. You begin to understand that life's purpose isn't comfort, it's expansion. As Jim Rohn said, don't join the easy crowd, you won't grow there. Go where the expectations are high. When you seek growth, you rise to meet those expectations, and in doing so, you outgrow the old version of yourself that was ruled by fear. The remarkable thing about this journey is that once you start choosing growth consistently, fear begins to lose its voice. It still whispers, but it no longer commands. You recognize it for what it is, a shadow, not a substance. The more you act in the face of fear, the more you realize it was never the obstacle. The obstacle was always your belief in its power. So if you want to kill negative thinking, stop running from fear and start learning from it. Every moment of fear is an opportunity to practice courage, to prove to yourself that you are bigger than your doubts. Let fear be your signal to grow, not your reason to stop. Because the truth is this: fear fades, but growth remains. And every time you choose growth over fear, you take